Today we're going to go through the various loops that you will come across in MT264. The first loop that you will come across is the for each loop. The for each loop is ideal for going through every object in a collection or every element within an array, as long as you don't care in which order you go through these elements or objects. For instance, if you want to add up every integer within an integer array, then the for each loop is ideal for this because you do not care in which order you add these numbers up. Be aware that you should not change the collection or array that you are iterating over with the for each loop. The next loop you will come across is the for loop. Now, if you care about the order in which you want to iterate through the array or the collection, then you will need to use a for loop. However, to use a for loop, you must know how many times through the loop you want to go. If you don't know how many times you need to go through the loop to achieve your task, then you'll probably need to use the while loop. Please remember that when you use a while loop, you need to update the loop control variable yourself, otherwise you risk an infinite loop. In summary, always use the right loop for the job. If you know the number of iterations beforehand, then you should be using a for loop. If the number of iterations are unknown beforehand, then you should use a while loop. An example of this would be if you're trying to search for something within an array. Obviously beforehand you do not know how many iterations it is going to take for you to find what you are looking for. Now moving on to strings. Strings in VB.NET are instances of the string class, and strings are immutable, which means that they cannot change state. What this means is that if you invoke a method on a string, this will not change the string that you've invoked the method on, but what will tend to happen is that you'll get a new instance back of a string, and then if you want to, you can assign that new instance perhaps back to the string that you've invoked the method on. An example of this is if you invoke the method toUpper on a string, this will not change a string, but what you will get back is a new instance which you can then assign back to a string if you like. Okay, moving on to an exercise where we can practice what we've just learned. Think about how you would write a method to capitalize the first letter of every sentence. Now the first thing to decide is what loop would be appropriate. Well, if you know that you have to go through the whole string, and you also know that you care about the order, then that gives you a big clue as to what loop you should use. However, if you just need to fix the first two sentences, then this may change the type of loop that you would want to use. And also, once you have fixed the first two sentences, you may want to transition into another type of loop for the last bit of the algorithm. Okay, a couple more hints to help you with this algorithm. The first character of the string is a special case. You may like to have a boolean to track when you hit the end of a sentence, and you will want to avoid trying to convert a space to uppercase. That should be enough to be going on with.